What is happening, y'all? The millennium is here to jerk off to some more coffee today in his mom's basement slash, well, I wish I lived in my mom's basement because it would be much more affordable than it is here in this tiny studio here in the Bay Area. In case you didn't get the reference, I'm just responding to a YouTube troll. Comes with the territory. What can you do? Anyway, I've got a coffee review for you today, and I promise not to jerk off to it. I'll just talk about it. And it is from Passion House Coffee Roasters, and they are out of Chicago, Illinois. Really, I like this bag. I know it's not an important thing, particularly the logo here. I think it's a cool little colorful cube. Makes me think of artsy fartsy things, and I think it is very fitting for specialty coffee, and particularly specialty coffee that is good like this. So I thought something that was interesting about these guys is that they define their coffees under 3 different genres, and that's what this logo is referencing, AME. I thought it had something to do with maybe it was like 3 founders, and then one of them had the name Amanda, the other one maybe Michael, and then the third one Ernie. But it's not that way. It's actually that A stands for ambient, M stands for mainstream, and E stands for experimental. So that's how they define their 3 coffees. According to the bag, ambient would be a heavier bodied, darker note coffee. Mainstream would be well balanced and juicy, and experimental would be bright and unique. So as most places will kind of define their coffee as either a blend or a single origin or a light roast, medium roast, dark roast, these guys have kind of set that aside and just said, look, we're going to define our coffee based off of the way it tastes. And I think that's kind of a clever way of doing things, because lots of those descriptions of coffee don't really make sense to the average coffee drinker. Not everybody is a snobby millennium like me that talks about coffee using silly words like light roast. Anyway, this is a mainstream coffee according to these guys. And something that I did notice on the website is that they defined it as single origins. So it is a single origin coffee. It is from Papua New Guinea, as I said, and it is the Kula Peaberry. So Kula, I believe, well, I don't know what Kula refers to, because it looks like the producer here is the Sigri estate, and the region is the Wighi Valley. I could totally be saying that wrong. The peaberry, though, I can tell you what that means. So coffee beans, they come from a fruit, which is called coffee cherries. You probably already knew that. What you may or may not have known is that there are usually 2 beans inside each coffee cherry. However, a peaberry would be a situation where you just have 1 bean. And that 1 bean is going to be smaller than your traditional coffee bean. So these are very little coffee beans, and it kind of makes sense. They're like little peas, peaberries. So in my experience, peaberry coffee is usually on the fruitier side. And this was a situation that I thought was interesting, because I wasn't getting a lot of fruit notes out of this coffee. I was getting more of those cocoa, maybe some dried fruit, but more like cocoa and cinnamon and nutty. All right, guys, got my empty bag of coffee, which I think is a great way to conclude this review. Passion House Coffee Roasters. They are from Chicago, Illinois, as I mentioned before. If you happen to live in Chicago or in that area, or maybe you're visiting that great city that can be quite cold in the winter, But there's a lot of good specialty coffee in Chicago, obviously, or maybe not obviously to you, but these guys are a smaller roaster, and I would highly recommend checking them out. Just based off of my experience with this coffee, I was impressed because I thought it was really balanced. As I mentioned before, it is a light roast, but it doesn't really have too many light roast elements. It's more in line with medium dark roast in terms of flavor notes. So I thought that was really interesting. And I could say that it was complex because it did still have some of those light roast notes in it. I tasted some of those dry fruit notes that they're describing here, just like hints of acidity throughout the drinking experience. Of course, depended on how I brewed it up. I did find that when I used its American press, or American press, depending on how you want to say it, I was on the road with it, and I was so happy that I had this bag of coffee with me. I was staying in a hotel, and man, I mean, I'm not too picky. You know, you'd think I would be, but I was poured some coffee at breakfast at the little continental breakfast over at the hotel, and man, I tell you, that was some bad coffee. So the next morning, I made sure to brew up my own, and it was these guys, brought it in with me, and I was very happy that I had a more than decent cup of coffee with me that morning. So I would say that if you haven't had too much experience with light roasts, you're more of a dark roast, medium roast fan, but you like your light roast here and there maybe, I would highly recommend this. I think it is a nicely balanced coffee. It's got nice chocolate, nutty notes to it, and overall pretty good. So thanks so much for watching, and do not forget to hit the subscribe button if you like coffee. Until next time, peace.